Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Behaviour. My name is Ariela, and I am your host. And today I have a pretty incredible guest, Megan Suggitt. Megan is a neurodivergent entrepreneur who embraces her nonverbal learning disability and uses it to cultivate neurodiversity. Her business, Beautiful Minds, provides mentoring and academic support services from a neurodiverse lens, empowering those with learning disabilities to see their ability. Megan is passionate about advocating and learning for learning disabilities and cultivating neurodiversity as I stumble on all my words. Megan, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you here. We chatted a little bit before you came out to the podcast, and I'm really fascinated about what you do. How are you today?
Good, thank you. And thank you so much for that great intro. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to have you here. I want to know before we kind of dive in, tell us about Beautiful Minds, which is the name of your business, and how it kind of came to be.
Yeah, so Beautiful Minds is empowering, in particular, neurodivergent youth from a neurodiverse perspective to see their ability. So I focus on mentoring and tutoring. I also do a lot of social groups, in particular with neurodivergent teens. And my journey to create Beautiful Minds was really empowered and started from my own lived experiences with a nonverbal learning disability. So I saw a lot of myself in the work I do with youth as a child and youth worker. I saw students who are neurodivergent just struggling and really not being able to see their worth with their learning disability, falling through the cracks of the educational system. And I really wanted to make a change, so I decided to use my own lived experiences and start my own business. I've always been very creative in creating my own pathways in life, so that's essentially where Beautiful Minds stemmed from, was seeing some of my own lived experiences in the kids that I was working with.
Amazing, and that's very similar to kind of why I do what I do as well. So I want to hear a little bit because not everybody kind of knows. I think you and I take for granted the words neurodivergent, neurodiverse, learning disabilities. So I want to back up a little bit, and you said you work from a neurodiverse lens and that you have a nonverbal learning disability. Can you, if you feel comfortable, expand on that a little bit so that our audience kind of understands what you mean?
Yeah, definitely. So, nonverbal learning disability is one of the more unique learning disabilities. It's actually only impacted 2% of the population, so it's a more unique, unknown learning disability. We can talk, we're very verbally gifted. I flourish with books and reading and writing at such a young age. We're very talkative, we're talkers, but it's everything that's nonverbal. So, all the social cues we struggle with. We struggle with sarcasm. We struggle with maps. To this day, I still can't drive, but I'm okay with that. We find ways to cope and learn around those things that we can't do. Math, science, those are just some of the things that we might struggle with. And then when it comes to neurodivergent and neurodivergence, it's kind of a new term. So it's allowing people to, instead of seeing their disability as a weakness, they see all the gifts associated with their disability.
Absolutely, and I use those terms a lot because again, I agree with you. I think I have I'm neurodiverse as is my child, as I'm sure my husband
Great.
is, as I'm sure my other child is,
Yeah,
and so is a lot of our world. And I think
absolutely.
I was watching a show yesterday with my kids, and it was about there was like a singer or something from a different country that was known, and the audience was autistic. And the
Oh,
audience members got to ask this individual questions.
that's
And there was
amazing.
one lady wearing a shirt saying, I don't have autism, I'm autistic. And so it really like
Sparks
it yeah,
conversation.
it did.
Yeah,
It did. And I'm so
yeah,
glad it did
definitely.
because my son, and I think I don't even hear it anymore, or he'll often say, "Oh, does that person have autism?" I'm like, "Well, no, they don't. Like they don't have a cold. Like autism isn't, or neurodiversity, any kind of
Yeah.
diagnosis label isn't like a negative thing.
No,
They
definitely.
are,
Disability
yeah,
is not a dirty word. I think a lot of people still associate with that perspective. It's
because of the
sad.
negative, right? Like disability.
Yeah,
And I always say everybody has beautiful abilities. I honestly,
exactly.
I,
That's
I don't,
essentially why my business is named Beautiful
beautiful
Minds, because
minds.
we
And
all
I
have
think,
beautiful
and
minds.
that's what drew me to you in the first place
Yeah,
because the name of your business, because I follow you on socials, as you know,
yeah,
the name of your
yeah,
business just drew me in because I was like,
yeah.
I need to speak to this person because I love that, right? Like beautiful minds.
Yeah,
That's what it is. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like my business, Spectrum of Light,
Yeah, I love your
is
name
is
too. It's such a
so many
beautiful way
reasons.
of seeing different things from different lens,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
So yeah, so okay, so nonverbal learning disability, you have challenges with those more like nonverbal, and I would say like since you said math and maps, maybe some more
Yeah.
like abstract kind of
Yeah, you got it. So the abstract kind of thinking.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so okay, so I want to know like what sets Beautiful Minds apart from other services that support neurodiverse or neurodivergent youth?
Right, right. So I feel like a lot of, I'm not sure if you find this, but a lot of neurodivergent disability businesses and services, they don't necessarily have lived experiences. So I think that brings a more unique perspective and a more unique lens when you have a lived experience with a learning disability. Anyone can start a business, but when you are neurodivergent and you've lived the experiences, you've gone through some of the hurdles yourself, you know, and can relate to some of the people that walk through your doors, and you can really empower and help them through your own lived experiences.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that translates through your work, and I'm sure that's
Yeah.
why your clients feel empowered and comfortable working with you because you're right.
Yeah,
There is a difference when
definitely.
you work with somebody who's been through it as opposed to somebody who's just trained. And I always say
Yes,
you can
exactly.
have as many PhDs as you want, but if you don't have life experience or if you haven't
No,
actually
I
been out
agree.
there, like yeah, I mean, when I first started as a CYW over 20 years ago, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. Like I was not
Yeah.
good at my job. But as
Yeah, I
life went
feel that.
on,
I'm a
yeah,
CYW too.
right? Like, yeah, I graduated and I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to make a difference. And I did make a difference. But,
Yeah.
as life went on, not only did I have the, experience from working in the field, life happened and realizations happened. And like, I learned
Absolutely.
that I am neurodivergent and
Yeah.
I have a neurodiverse kid. And so, 20 years in was the right time to start my business because I
Yeah.
have all that behind me
Absolutely.
as opposed to being 20 years ago
Yeah.
trying to help the population I'm helping now would not
Yeah.
have worked,
No,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you encounter with your business? Like, whether it's I often say, getting out there and being known and getting clients. So, what are some of those pieces for you?
Yeah, all of those pieces definitely hit the nail on its head. I would say marketing and just try, like when you're not a therapist and you're not classified as a teacher or a therapist, it's really hard to attract the right clients to you and for them to fully understand what you do too, because we work from such a unique perspective and we have such a unique educational background. I have a child and youth worker diploma. I have disability studies degrees. So it's a little bit of a different educational journey when it comes to my credentials, but just kind of attracting the right clients and meeting the right neurodivergent people has been such a struggle in my business.
Yeah, and I think too, like we talked about this before, like having people really understand that the investment is so worth
Yes,
it because it makes such a big
exactly.
difference, right?
Yes,
You know,
definitely.
you aren't a regulated health professional, which
Yep.
means that you're not reimbursable by benefits or the OAP.
Yeah.
However, and I always tell people this, like the investment is worth it because
Yeah,
the short-term investment
definitely.
will have such long-lasting effects, and it really, you're in a very unique kind of niche, like you said, and you can support the individuals very differently than
Yeah.
other service providers
Absolutely.
can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have such a unique background that we have a lot to offer. It's just trying to get in front of the people, right?
Yeah. And I always say like your people will find you, right? So,
Yeah,
I've been in business a year and it's been tough, right? Like it's been
it
tough to get
is.
out there and get known,
It
but
definitely, and COVID didn't help as
COVID
well,
didn't help.
right? So,
Yeah, and but the right people find you. Like I truly believe that you end up servicing and working with the people that are
yeah,
meant for you to work with.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and I think you just from getting to know you the little bit that I have aren't in the business of just like getting any client so we can book a client, make money. Like that's not the vibe I get
No,
from you. That's not
no.
my
We
vibe.
want
If
to make a
you want to
difference.
make a difference, and even for me,
Yeah,
if I speak to a
absolutely.
parent or a daycare or a client and it's not a good match, I will be very upfront and be like,
Yeah.
you know what, I don't think I can be very effective.
Yeah.
However, let me
And
refer you to
that's
someone.
always hard too, right? Like trying to let people go. You want to help so many, but you can
Yes.
only take on so much, right?
You can only take on so much, and also if it's not a good match, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
it's just not, it's just they think they're looking for what you're offering, but
Yeah.
that's not actually what they need. And I'm a firm believer in, if I'm not the right match for you, let me steer you in the right direction. Like even
Yeah.
after you and I talked, I
Absolutely.
thought, oh, you can do some great work with a charity that I work with. So I
Yeah,
connected you right
yeah. It was
away.
great to connect with her as
She's
well.
incredible, and I'm gonna have her on the podcast. I
Yeah.
hope. I have to speak to her still,
Yeah.
but it's all about kind of that, we're a village, and I truly
Yeah,
believe in
I believe in
community.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's important when it comes to the whole neurodiversity perspective too, because we're creating neurodiverse communities, right? And we all
Yes.
have a way that we can flourish and fit in with one another. Is just finding who is out there and similar to us.
Exactly. So tell me about some of the challenges that your clients face.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of different ones. In particular, a big one would be self-esteem. I think that's a huge one when it comes to any type of learning disability, autism, any type of neurodivergent disorder. Self-esteem, self-worth. Most often, teenagers and young people will see all of the things they can't do. They might look and see their peers being able to do things with, ease and no problem. But when it comes to things that they struggle with, they just feel really downright stupid and really horrible about themselves, and they really struggle with school. So that's about teaching them some of the neurodivergent skills and traits that we talk about. So seeing what they can do versus what they can't do. Other things that a lot of my clients struggle with is goal setting and just the next step. They are kind of lost in this pit of like the unknown, not knowing where to go next after high school. It's like now, do I go to college? Do I get a job? It's just that kind of unknown piece. So building those foundational life skills is really important with the clients that I serve. And I would say relationship safety is coming up a lot more with the clients that I'm serving lately. I think there's a lot of naiveness around neurodivergent young people in trusting, overly trusting people. And that's become quite a red flag on my end. I'm trying to teach safety skills and teaching them who's a good person, who's a bad person, and just street sense essentially.
Which is really
Yeah,
hard to teach because that is
it
so
is.
abstract, and a lot of our, neurodiverse or neurodivergent brains are
Yeah.
often do better with so many more concrete ideas. And I know that another organization that I follow that's also coming onto the podcast in a few weeks, they're doing a lot of work around like sex education and
That's something
neurodivergent
we need.
youth.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah,
something so
yeah.
important.
And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people, like, a lot of, I guess, people who aren't very familiar with the community, like, especially for, they think, kids who are artistic or whatever, like, they don't
They
think about
don't engage
sex.
in sex,
They
right? Yeah, no,
do.
absolutely.
Yeah, we're human. We are all human.
Yeah,
So I don't really, it doesn't matter what your diagnosis is, it doesn't matter what your
no,
neurodivergence is. Your
exactly.
body is human, your brain has thoughts.
Yeah.
And so it is so important. Like
It
right? Like
is.
people often forget that. And I think it's so important to
Yeah,
talk about because, and I think that's where a lot of, a lot of kind of the society's kind of awareness is coming to be now
yeah,
is that, yeah, like just because you
yeah,
have an autistic youth who doesn't communicate verbally
yeah,
and who perhaps doesn't have as many acquired daily living skills and who perhaps needs a lot of
yeah,
support through their life
definitely.
does not mean that they haven't gone through puberty,
Yeah,
doesn't mean that they're not having
yeah,
the thoughts, and it's so important to teach them the skill at their level.
yes,
um
absolutely.
Anyways, I'm a big advocate for all
Yeah,
that.
no. Healthy
um
relationships
yeah,
has definitely been a theme popping up a lot more with the neurodivergent young people that I've been working with, and
yeah.
it's such a tricky area to navigate, right?
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
there's so much. There's like,
Yeah.
parental consent to talk about it. And it's
Yes.
a lot of work I do with parents is that piece from behind the scenes, right? Like talking them through, yeah, but your child is 14,
Yeah.
right?
And not
Yes, you're
seeing them in that little baby adult, baby state, right?
yes. They
Yeah.
may still be in a, I spoke to a mom the other day that kind of it clicked for her and she was like, "Oh, is this the way my child's always going to be? Like he's not going to click out of it." And she had that realization. And I said to her, "Yeah, like your child is 16.
Yeah.
He might." you might see him as still behaving like a 6-year-old, but he is 16 in
Yeah.
his body and his brain. Like he's 16.
Yeah.
And so we had to talk a lot about that. So let's get back to Beautiful Minds
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, sure.
Um, Tell me about, so when you do work virtually with your clients and how, so tell me a little bit about what sessions look like. Like how long are they? What kind of
Yeah.
strategies do you use to support your
Yeah,
clients?
sure. Depending on the attention span of people, like they might vary from 30 minutes to up to an hour, just depending on, energy levels. A lot of kids that I work with have ADHD, so I'm very
Yes.
mindful of that. Shorter sessions are sometimes better.
Yes.
And a lot of my sessions are very engaging. I like to bring in engaging, activities we could do, like online games incorporated into my sessions, a lot of visual information I incorporate, a lot of lived experiences, a lot of my child and youth worker perspective and backpack I carry into the sessions as well, along with my disability studies lens. So I bring forth neurodivergent perspective as well as a mix of kind of both child and youth work and disability studies. It kind of immerses together. But everything is very strengths based that I do, very neurodivergent based, and based on what the learning styles are like for each child. So essentially, the first session is usually getting to know the child, doing icebreakers, and then we move into what type of learner am I, and doing like a learning skills test to find out what type of learner they are, and then I can gear that towards the sessions. If they're a visual learner, I might bring in more visual tools for them. So I'm
Amazing.
always adjusting and trying to, yeah, bring forth the best possible resources.
That's great. And how, like, typically, how many sessions does someone do with you? Or do you kind of just like, is there like a set, like, oh, you're going to sign up for 6 or 12 sections? Or is it more, we do sessions as you need them, and once you feel that you're good, we stop?
Yeah, yeah, I would say it's always in the client's hands. It most often is, we'll do weekly sessions and then you can tell me when you want to take a break or lessen the amount that we're meeting. So it's
Okay.
definitely always client geared.
Wonderful. And what kinds of things do you cover? Is it just educational that, well, you said what kinds of things you cover, sorry, but aside from educational and social, like do you, um, I know that we're not therapists and things like that. I get the sense that you do a lot of the stuff that I do, like more coaching and things like that.
Yeah.
So do you do role plays? Do you do like things like that with your clients?
Yeah, definitely. I do, in particular, role playing and social scripts when it comes to working with my autistic clients. We do a lot of that stuff, preparing them with social study or social stories for the next step. I prepared one client with like a social storybook when it came to getting a first job and graduating, so she felt more prepared and ready to face the world. We can definitely, anything that that a child wants to do and learn about, we can definitely cover it in my sessions. So it really varies from a lot of different things we do. We can do goal setting, learning strategies. I'm big on learning strategies, especially when it comes to learning disabilities and autism. So I teach them how to chunk assignments down so it doesn't feel as overwhelming, or just working on those little baby steps so something doesn't feel as overwhelming in the moment, breaking it down for them.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a much needed service. I mean, I think, I
Yeah. Thank
had,
you.
yeah, I just had recently Diamond Teachers Group on my podcast, which is
That's
a
awesome.
tutoring session. Yeah, a tutoring service that is certified teachers and with different backgrounds. But what I was getting to is that, they really tailor their approach to each individual as well and kind of give them what they need. They don't have like a one size fits all.
Yeah, that's what I believe in too.
Yeah, and so it sounds very similar because I think, that's more education based where they work on schoolwork and all that stuff. And I think you sound very kind of similar in the way that you approach your clients.
Yeah, yeah,
But I love that you
definitely.
focus more on their daily, right? Like what is
Yeah.
going on in your life?
Yeah.
Let's tackle it. Let's
Always a
learn how to
check
get through it.
in, always
Yeah,
diving deep. We do like a brain dump and figure out all the things that are going on and chat through some of those obstacles and try to help them the best
love
way I
it.
can.
I love
Yeah.
that. So let's gear away from Beautiful Minds for a second and talk about Megan. In terms of, so, life is stressful. Before we started recording, we just, we were talking about like MRIs and all the things
Yeah.
because my son just had a bit of a
Yeah. I'm
thing with an
sorry.
MRI. It
Those
went
are not
wrong. It
good.
wasn't good. But what I want to know is what helps you on a daily, like, I try to practice mindfulness and I try to like, do some breathing and all those things. What kind of self-care and what kind of strategies do you use to support you when you're stressed?
Yeah, sure. So I love spending time in nature. I recently adopted a dog this past year. So lots of
Amazing.
dog walks. I love taking her out for walks. And she also, I hope to bring her into Beautiful Minds in the future as a
Yeah.
future therapy dog to do some, yeah, pet therapy. So I love spending time with my dog, going on walks. I love reading. I'm such a bookwormer. That's always been my comfort hobby since I was a child. And I also love writing. I'm currently writing my own book about my own lived experiences with my learning
Amazing.
disabilities. So I consider that a form of self care.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And is it going to be called Beautiful Minds? I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, self-care is so important, but
Yeah.
I also feel like for neurodivergence, we get to that neurodivergent breakout point
Yeah.
sometimes where
That
it's like,
burnout.
okay, we need to definitely focus on some self-care. We just get so busy and wrapped in our own daily things, right? We forget to do that.
It's hard. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's
it
hard to remember,
definitely is.
especially when your brain, I mean, if you lived in my brain, it
Yeah,
goes a mile a minute and
yeah,
there's a million things in there.
I know.
Even if I look like I'm watching TV and not thinking about anything, I'm thinking about something
It's
or five
hard,
things.
yeah. I feel you.
Yeah, it's so hard. Well, I'm really glad to hear that you are, able to put that in there. And I'm really excited actually to um, kind of see what happens with this book. And you need to
Yeah,
let me
thank
know
you.
when
I
it's
know
ready.
it's in the process, so hopefully
That's
it'll come
exciting. No,
together.
like if,
Yeah.
once it's done and I'm
Yeah,
sure you'll be
absolutely. I'll
successful.
definitely tell you.
Yeah, I would love to read it. I would love to kind of like get in
Oh,
your head and see.
you're frozen. Oh,
There we go. Yeah,
oh,
internet
you were
issues.
frozen for a minute.
Yeah, that's
Right.
okay. So I was just gonna say, like, I would love to like kind of see what your journey's about and get into your head, and that's
Yeah,
how I learn. I love to hear
absolutely.
people's journeys.
Yeah, me
Um,
too. I think there's a lot of importance in reading neurodivergent books
yes,
out there. I think that's
yes,
super important too when it comes to
yeah,
neurodivergent businesses.
yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of like, there's a lot more TV shows and stuff. Those are things are produced though, right? So like,
Yeah.
um, and I still watch them because I think it's great exposure, and I think it actually teaches people that, again, like folks are real.
Yeah, no,
But
absolutely.
yeah. What
Absolutely.
is there anything that you would like any advice or recommendations or suggestions that you would give parents of neurodivergent youth that are perhaps, going through life changes or struggling with some social areas and things like that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that parents should remember is that, even though their child might have a disability, there's often so many gifts associated with that disability. Even though they might not be able to do A, B, C, they can do amazing things, such as maybe they're more artistic or maybe they're more athletic, maybe they can talk really well. So there's always a way to see their disability from a different lens. And I think there's too much of an emphasis on what a child can't do versus what a child can do when it comes
Yes.
to disability. So that's something that I carry with me into all the work I do. It's just a label, but there's so much more than just a label that's attached to the child.
Yeah, and I think, also looking at strengths from not societal strengths, right? Like
Yeah,
societal
absolutely. An
expectations.
ableist, kind of medicalized perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot of the work that I used to do with in classrooms and I used to go and coach classroom teams is like, how are we going to,
Yeah.
what kind of, what kind of activities or strategies or programs are we going to put in for this child that is
Yeah.
going to, garner their interest, that is
Yeah,
going to play to their
definitely.
strengths, that is going to enhance their strengths and continue to teach them the
Exactly.
skills, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Like they may not go on to be
Exactly.
a professor somewhere, but this
Oh,
child has something to give to the
yeah.
world,
Yeah,
help them kind of
definitely.
harness that. Yeah,
I
that's
think there's a
beautiful.
lot of gift. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do think there's a lot of gifts, and I'm a firm
yeah.
believer of, yeah, trying to spread neurodivergence awareness in this
Yes,
world.
advocating. Absolutely. And this is
Yeah.
part of why I'm doing this
Yeah,
podcast.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, just to put it out there and like to show people that
Yeah.
A, there's so many different supports and
Yeah.
organizations and people to help
Exactly.
folks. Yeah, but also
Exactly.
that neurodivergence is not this like negative, bad, like you're
No,
neurodiverse,
no,
I'm
it's not.
neurodiverse,
No. And
right?
even like child, using your son in your podcast too, like
Yeah.
having those child-led perspectives, I think are really important too, because sometimes they go into the educational system and they're seen as the bad kid, but they don't really understand everything that they carry day to
Yeah,
day to day, right?
absolutely. And
So
I have to say, I
unpacking that,
struggled
right?
with that a little bit. I wasn't going to bring him in
Yeah.
because I don't like it's a public forum. Like
Yeah.
my social media, my private social media is like private. It's not public, right?
Yeah.
But
Same.
he really wanted to. So this is
No,
all
that's
him,
amazing.
right? We did a live yesterday, and that was him. We were on the train back.
Yeah.
He's like, "Mom, I want to do a live with you for your page."
That's so important.
Yeah. So this is and my husband and I still talk about it because he struggles with it a bit. But I'm like, listen, the kid's almost 11. Like he wants to have a voice and he wants to
Yeah.
be an
It's
advocate, and
so
I want to
important.
help him do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like I didn't have a voice when I was younger,
Yeah.
and the teachers kind of, pushed me along and told me what I can and can't do. So this was,
Exactly.
in a way, taking back my power.
Exactly. And I feel the same way. Like the work
Yeah,
that I'm doing
it's
now, yes, I'm
beautiful.
doing it with parents, but I still kind of have an effect. It's all culminating life experience. And now I have a
Absolutely.
voice. I
No,
have,
it's
a
important.
platform. Hopefully
Yeah,
that
it's
platform will
wonderful.
grow.
I love what you're
Yeah.
creating. No, it's
Thank
amazing.
you. And I feel the same about you. Like I'm so
Yeah,
glad we
thank you.
connected. And I feel
Yeah,
like
me
we'll,
too. Me too.
yeah, like I'm sure we'll do things together in the future.
We
But
will.
yeah, no, for sure we'll keep in touch, and we're not far
Yeah.
from each other anyways.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, with that, I want to thank you for coming. I think
Yeah, well, thank you so much
yeah,
for having me. This was wonderful.
yeah, it was great. And keep in touch. Let me know how things are
Yes,
going.
I
And
will.
before we go, how can people find you?
Yes, so they can find me on Instagram, Facebook, my website, so Beautiful Minds, Ontario, Beautiful Minds Canada. That's where you can
Beautiful.
find me.
And your website is
Beautifulmindscanada.com.
awesome.
Yep.
Okay, well, with that, we're gonna end off. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
well,
And
thank
to
you.
everyone out there, I just want to remind you all that we are on this journey together. And if this episode is helpful to you and you think it would be helpful to a friend, please do share it. Please also subscribe, like, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye,
Sounds good.
everyone.
Bye-bye.